All right, so if you're in library school, you're spending a lot of time learning about card catalogs, Dewey Decimal, all these amazing systems we've built to organize physical knowledge, right? But what happens when the library isn't made of shelves, but of servers? When it's basically infinite and lives in the cloud? That's a whole different ballgame. Today, we're going to dig into one of the most brilliant and honestly elegant solutions to that exact problem, Dublin Core.
So let's jump in the time machine and go back to, say, 1995. The World Wide Web was this wild, new frontier. It was just a chaotic explosion of information. And yeah, there were only about 500,000 websites, which sounds tiny now, but trying to find anything specific? Whoa, it was like searching for one particular grain of sand on a massive beach with no map, no compass, nothing. The huge question everyone was asking was, how on earth do we bring some order to this digital chaos?
So what was the answer? You might think it was some super complex new technology, some crazy algorithm, but no. The big idea, the one that really changed everything, was actually an old concept, something librarians have known about forever, just reimagined for the digital age. And that concept was metadata.
Okay, let's break that down, because it sounds a little circular, right? Data about data. What does that even mean? Well, put simply, it's the digital version of the info you'd find on an old-school library card. It's not the resource itself, but it's all the stuff about the resource. The what, who, when, where, and why of that thing. And that's what makes it possible to actually find it, use it, and manage it.
Now, for all of you who are deep in your cataloging classes right now, this is where things get really interesting. You're probably spending hours learning super complex detail standards like Mark 21, and for good reason. But web metadata, it was built on a totally different philosophy. The whole point was that it needed to be simple. Simple enough that anyone, not just a highly trained cataloger, could apply it to their own stuff. This was a huge, huge shift. We went from just describing physical books to needing a way to describe, well, everything. Web pages, images, videos, you name it.
So why bother with all this? What's the point? Well, metadata basically has 4 core jobs. First up, discovery. That's the one we all get. It helps people find stuff. Pretty crucial. Then there's interoperability. That sounds complicated, but it just means it helps different systems and databases talk to each other without getting confused. Think of it as a universal translator. Next, digital identification. This gives every single digital object a unique address, like a URL or a DOI, so we know exactly what we're talking about. And last, but definitely not least, archiving and preservation. This is about making sure our digital history, our culture, doesn't just, vanish into thin air.
Okay, so we've got the why. We know we need metadata, but the world needed a how. We needed a standard, a set of rules everyone could agree on and actually use, and that's when Dublin Core steps onto the scene.
And what's so cool about Dublin Core is its mission. Just look at this quote. The key phrase here is applied by non-catalogers. You have to understand, at the time, this was a radical idea. The whole point wasn't to take the amazing but complex world of library science and just copy-paste it onto the web. Nope. The goal was to create a simple, intuitive toolkit that the people actually creating the content could use themselves. Simplicity wasn't a limitation, it was the entire point. It was a feature, not a bug.
And guess what? It totally worked. It all started at a workshop back in 1995 in, you guessed it, Dublin, Ohio. That's literally where the name comes from. From there, it just took off. By the early 2000s, it wasn't just some niche idea. It was an official US and then an international standard. That journey, from just a single workshop to a global standard, really shows you how powerful and desperately needed the simple idea was.
So it's not just one size fits all. There are basically 2 flavors of Dublin Core. You've got simple Dublin Core, which is just the basic 15 core elements. It's designed to be super easy, super universal, anyone can do it. Then you have qualified Dublin Core. This lets you add more detail, these things called qualifiers, to get a much richer, more specific description. So you see the trade-off, right? Simple is all about high interoperability. Everyone can use it. Qualified gives you more precision, but yeah, it can get a little more complex.
All right, so I keep talking about these 15 core elements. What are these magic ingredients that help organize the web? Let's dive in and take a look.
And here they are, the whole shebang. Now take a deep breath. Don't feel like you have to memorize this entire chart right this second. Just think of this as a handy reference guide. The real genius here isn't in the individual elements, but in how they cluster together into these really logical groups, and we're going to break those down right now.
Okay, first up we have the group that answers the most basic question of all. What is this thing? Super straightforward. You've got the title, you know what it's called, the subject, which is basically keywords for what it's about, and the description, like a little abstract or a summary. See? Simple, right?
Next group. This one is all about answering who made this. It's all about giving credit where credit is due. So you have the creator, that's your main author or artist. You have the publisher, the entity that made it available to the world, and then contributor, which is a great catch-all for anyone else who had a hand in it. Easy peasy.
And finally, we have the elements that give us context. These answer the question, okay, but how does this resource fit into the bigger picture? This is where you find things like date, to place it in a timeline, coverage, which can be a place or a time period it covers, and relation, which is super powerful because it lets you link resources together. You know, like saying this chapter is part of that book, or this photo is from that collection.
All right, I know what some of you might be thinking. This stuff was developed back in the 90s. That's ancient history. So why are we, as the next generation of information professionals, still talking about it today? Well, it's because the core principles behind it are more important now than they have ever been.
Look, this isn't just theory. This is your professional toolkit for the digital age. Seriously, if you understand Dublin Core, you understand how to make things findable online. That's the heart of SEO. It is literally the backbone of the digital libraries and archives that you are going to build in your careers. It's the secret sauce that lets your future library system share data seamlessly with a library on the other side of the planet. And that rights element we saw, that's your go-to tool for protecting intellectual property in a world of copy-paste. This is practical, essential stuff.
So no, this is not just a history lesson. Far from it. These simple, elegant standards like Dublin Core, they are the absolute foundation for what's coming next. We're talking about the semantic web, about AI-driven discovery. All of that amazing tech relies on one thing: good, structured, understandable data. Which brings us to a final, pretty big question to leave you with. As we head into that future, what is the library card actually going to look like?
That is definitely something for all of us in this field to think about. Hey, if this explainer helped clear things up for you on Dublin Core, do us a favor and hit that like button, share it with a classmate, and subscribe for more deep dives into the essential tools that shape our digital world. Thanks so much for watching.